Gangs in American prisons, the hidden dangers you need to know. Behind the razor wire. Inside America's prison walls, control isn't always in the hands of the guards. Sometimes, the real power belongs to the gangs, silent, organized, and more dangerous than anyone on the outside could imagine. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. All information is based on public records, court filings, and credible investigative reporting. When most people think of prison, they picture concrete cells, metal doors, and orange jumpsuits. But inside those walls lies a hidden world, one that runs on a completely different code. It's a system where respect is earned through violence, loyalty is measured in blood, and survival depends on which side you choose. Across the United States, prison gangs have evolved from small groups of inmates into highly organized criminal networks. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, as of recent data, there are over 2 million people incarcerated in the U.S., and experts estimate that up to one-third of them are directly or indirectly influenced by gang activity. These groups don't just operate inside, they control drug routes, extortion schemes, and sometimes even coordinate hits beyond the prison walls. The origins of these gangs trace back to the racial and social tensions of the 1950s and 1960s. In California's overcrowded prisons, men sought safety in numbers. White inmates formed alliances like the Aryan Brotherhood, African American inmates gathered under the Black Guerrilla Family, and Hispanic groups formed the Mexican Mafia, or La-Im, one of the most feared criminal organizations in U.S. history. Over time, these alliances became armies with hierarchies, oaths, and rules that rivaled any organized crime syndicate on the outside. According to court filings and federal investigations, the Aryan Brotherhood began in California's San Quentin State Prison around 1964. What started as a protection club for white inmates soon evolved into a violent organization dealing in drugs, weapons, and murder for hire. Members often swore allegiance for life, a commitment sealed by acts of extreme violence. One FBI report noted that by the 1980s, the Aryan Brotherhood was responsible for nearly a quarter of all prison murders in the federal system, despite comprising less than 1% of the inmate population. But what makes these gangs especially dangerous isn't just their brutality, it's their structure. Each operates with a military-like hierarchy. At the top sits the shot caller, a commanding figure who may not even touch a weapon himself but wields influence through coded messages, loyal soldiers, and an intricate chain of command. Beneath him, lieutenants manage different prison yards or state branches, enforcing discipline through intimidation or assassination. Even simple infractions, like disrespecting a higher-ranking member, can mean death. According to reports from the California Department of Corrections, gang communication methods have become increasingly sophisticated. Gone are the days of scribbled notes hidden in food trays. Today, coded letters, encrypted phone calls through third parties, and even messages smuggled through legal mail are all part of the system. One former inmate, speaking under anonymity to the Los Angeles Times, said, "You don't have to talk to the boss to get an order. The walls talk for him." Inside facilities like Pelican Bay State Prison, a supermax facility designed to isolate the most violent offenders, entire gang structures continue to function despite solitary confinement. Investigations into the 2011 and 2013 hunger strikes revealed that gang leaders, even while locked in tiny windowless cells for 23 hours a day, managed to issue directives across multiple state prisons. Those strikes, initially framed as protests against long-term solitary confinement, also exposed the incredible reach of gang command networks. Meanwhile, across the country in Texas and the Midwest, groups like the Tango Blast, Texas Syndicate, and Latin Kings have established strongholds. According to law enforcement sources, Tango Blast operates under a unique system. Unlike most gangs, it lacks formal hierarchy. Yet its decentralized nature makes it harder to dismantle. Members identify through tattoos representing their city, like Houston, Austin, or Dallas, but the power lies in numbers, not rank. In the federal system, alliances shift depending on geography. In California, the Mexican Mafia dominates the southern Latino population, while the Nuestra Familia controls the north. Both groups have a violent feud dating back decades. According to multiple court filings and interviews, this conflict has resulted in hundreds of stabbings and homicides, not just inside prisons but across entire communities outside. Law enforcement calls it a war without end, fought in coded orders, racial lines, and years of revenge. The Black Guerrilla Family, BGF, founded in 1966 by George Jackson, began as a political movement inspired by Marxist and revolutionary ideas. But over time, according to the Department of Justice, it evolved into one of the most disciplined and feared black prison gangs in America. The BGF's operations extend from Maryland to California, combining ideology with organized crime, a mix that makes it unpredictable. In Baltimore, federal indictments have linked BGF members to corrupt corrections officers, large-scale drug operations, and multiple homicides. While the public often assumes these gangs are separated by race, the reality is more complicated. Alliances can cross color lines when profits are involved. A New York Times report once highlighted a temporary truce between the Aryan Brotherhood and the Mexican Mafia to control drug distribution inside California prisons, a move that shocked investigators but demonstrated the adaptability of these organizations. Beyond the immediate violence, the economic engine behind these gangs is staggering. Prison contraband, from cell phones and drugs to handmade weapons, forms a multi-million-dollar underground economy. According to reports by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, corruption among a minority of prison staff has enabled the flow of illicit goods. A single smuggled cell phone can fetch over $1,000, and drugs can be worth 10 times their street price inside. The result is a system where control is purchased, alliances are maintained through money, and death is just another transaction. Inside this world, new recruits, often young, frightened inmates, are forced to choose sides quickly. "You either run with someone or you run alone," said one former prisoner in a PBS interview. And running alone means you won't last long. Those who refuse to join risk being targeted as soft or unprotected. The gangs, in turn, offer identity, protection, and purpose, but at a deadly cost. Leaving is nearly impossible. According to federal indictments, the phrase, "blood in, blood out," isn't just symbolic, it's literal. What's hidden from most of the public is how these gangs influence not just violence but the very rhythm of prison life. Yard schedules, food lines, even the flow of information, all can be dictated by gang politics. One misstep can trigger riots that leave dozens injured. In 2000, a massive riot at Pelican Bay, sparked by racial tensions and gang rivalries, left several inmates dead and scores wounded. It took hours for guards to regain control. But perhaps the most chilling part of this entire system is how invisible it remains. To the outside world, it's just another day behind bars. But inside, there's a constant calculation: who's in control, who owes a debt, who's next. Power shifts daily, and silence is the only real safety. And as one retired warden told the Sacramento Bee, "We built walls to contain criminals. But inside those walls, they built an empire." Inside the hierarchy, how power and fear rule the yard. The power structure inside America's prisons isn't printed on paper, but every inmate knows it by heart. It begins at the top, a handful of men who may have been behind bars for decades, yet still control empires. Beneath them are enforcers, messengers, and loyal soldiers. Together, they form a government within a government, one that operates in total secrecy, enforced through fear and loyalty. Inside a place like California's Pelican Bay State Prison or USP Florence ADX in Colorado, you can't always tell who holds the real power. A man sitting quietly at a metal table in the yard might be the shot caller, responsible for dozens of lives. He doesn't shout or make threats. He doesn't have to. His word travels through coded signals, relayed from cell to cell until it reaches the right hands. According to a federal investigation into gang activity in California prisons, this chain of command works like a military network. The top tier, known as the Mesa in the Mexican Mafia, or Commission in the Aryan Brotherhood, makes the strategic decisions. Beneath them are regional lieutenants, sometimes called generals, who manage entire facilities. The lowest tier, soldiers, handle enforcement, collecting debts, protecting allies, or eliminating targets. This system is designed for one purpose: control. Every inmate, even those not affiliated with a gang, must navigate it. In some prisons, you can't even sit at the wrong table without violating the racial politics. The dining hall, the yard, the showers, everything is divided by color and allegiance. The guards might enforce order with handcuffs, but inside, the gangs enforce it with blades. In interviews and court transcripts, corrections officers describe how even minor disputes can spark chain reactions. It could start with a piece of bread, one officer said in a deposition. A white inmate takes food from a black inmate's tray, and suddenly every man in that block is choosing sides. When that happens, the shot callers step in, not to calm things down, but to decide whether the situation warrants blood. The rules are rigid and written in violence. Betrayal is punished with death. Cooperation with law enforcement is an unforgivable sin. One confirmed policy document from the Aryan Brotherhood, recovered during an FBI raid, stated bluntly, the penalty for treason is termination, no exceptions. According to prosecutors, termination meant execution by stabbing, strangulation, or whatever method was available. No witness, no forgiveness. Inmates live with this constant understanding, the gangs may be invisible, but they are everywhere. Surveillance footage has shown how a simple hand gesture in the yard can authorize a killing. Messages pass through contraband phones, disguised in tattoos, or whispered in passing through air vents. The communication network is so effective that even isolated inmates in solitary confinement continue to issue orders across the country. A chilling example came from the Federal Bureau of Prisons' 2019 investigation into a multi-state drug and murder conspiracy involving incarcerated leaders of the Mexican Mafia. Despite being locked in maximum security cells 23 hours a day, they coordinated with outside associates to smuggle narcotics into multiple institutions and launder the profits. It's not about confinement, one federal agent said. It's about influence, and influence doesn't need freedom. Inside the prison economy, debt is power. Everything from cigarettes and ramen noodles to drugs and protection carries a price. If an inmate can't pay, they owe favors, and those favors turn into control. Sometimes it's running an errand, delivering a message, or stabbing another inmate on command. It's like a loan shark system, explained a former San Quentin inmate in a 2021 interview. You borrow today, you bleed tomorrow. While prison officials use segregation and lockdowns to break these systems, the gangs adapt. They operate across institutions, states, and even federal lines. Members transferred from one prison to another carry messages in memory, coded words, numbers, or phrases that only insiders understand. In one federal indictment, prosecutors revealed a coded system based on page numbers of the Bible. A verse reference like John 3 verse 16 could mean an order to attack, to stand down, or to collect payment. The control isn't always physical. It's psychological. Fear becomes the invisible weapon. One wrong word, one mistaken glance, and an inmate could be green-lit, marked for death. Guards sometimes discover hit lists written in microscopic handwriting or carved under metal bunks. Some inmates spend years in isolation just to avoid the inevitable. The prison staff face their own version of this danger. Over the years, numerous reports have emerged of guards threatened, bribed, or blackmailed by inmates. According to court filings, members of the Black Guerrilla Family in Maryland once infiltrated the state's corrections system so deeply that several officers were convicted of smuggling drugs and cell phones in exchange for money and favors. One guard became pregnant by an inmate leader, a real-life story that exposed just how blurred the lines can become behind bars. And yet, the violence doesn't always happen openly. In supermax facilities, where every move is monitored, discipline is enforced through permission. No one acts without approval. A man may be insulted in the yard, but he can't retaliate until the hierarchy authorizes it. Acting alone is suicide. Everything goes through the chain, one ex-member testified during a RICO trial. You don't just stab someone, you get the green light first. The gang's reach extends beyond prison walls, touching neighborhoods across America. Families receive coded letters. Orders are relayed through girlfriends, cousins, or fake legal mail. According to a Department of Justice brief, entire street operations, drug trafficking, extortion, robbery, are controlled from inside prison cells. The term shot caller isn't a metaphor. It's literal. And the orders, when decoded, carry life or death weight. But perhaps the most disturbing truth is how many young inmates are drawn into these hierarchies voluntarily. In overcrowded prisons, fear and loneliness push them toward belonging. You walk in and everyone asks where you're from, what color you are, said a former inmate in a 2020 interview with Vice. You either pick a side or get picked apart. That choice, once made, becomes permanent. Refusing an order can mean execution. Leaving the gang. Almost impossible. According to an FBI agent who investigated the Mexican Mafia, the only way out is death or decades of witness protection. And even then, the past never fully disappears. Parolees who try to go straight often find themselves targeted by their old crews. "You can take the men out of prison," one retired warden said, "but if he owes a debt, the prison follows him home." The structure may look organized, but it's built on chaos, constantly shifting power struggles, betrayals, and survival tactics. One week's shot caller can be next week's corpse. Alliances form and break faster than guards can document them. Every new arrival brings a new variable, a new risk, a new weapon. This constant volatility is what makes prison gangs so dangerous, not just to inmates but to society itself. Their operations blur the line between inside and outside, punishment and profit. Behind the razor wire, the gangs have rewritten the rules of incarceration. They've turned confinement into control. The cost of control, riots, betrayals, and the fight to take back the prisons. The cost of control inside America's prisons isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in blood. Every power struggle, every riot, every coded message carries a human price. For decades, prison administrators, lawmakers, and law enforcement agencies have fought to break the cycle. But behind the razor wire, power rarely fades quietly. The first sign of unrest often begins small. A rumor spreads, someone didn't pay a debt, someone crossed a racial line, someone talked to a guard. In a place where loyalty means life, even a whisper can light a fuse. Within hours, tensions rise across the yard. Inmates stop eating. They refuse showers. They pace their cells in silence. Guards feel it, the shift in atmosphere. Something invisible and dangerous begins to move. In 2015, according to official reports from the California Department of Corrections, a riot at California State Prison, Sacramento erupted after a racial dispute between members of the Aryan Brotherhood and Black Guerrilla Family. Within minutes, more than 200 inmates were involved. The fighting spread like wildfire, fists, makeshift knives, shanks made from melted plastic and metal. When it ended, dozens were injured, and one inmate lay dead on the concrete. The official statement called it a racial disturbance. But inside, everyone knew it was about control. Federal data shows that nearly 70% of major prison riots over the last 2 decades have been linked, directly or indirectly, to gang rivalries. The gangs don't just influence violence, they dictate when it begins and when it ends. Guards can trigger lockdowns, but the true ceasefire only comes when the leaders agree to it. According to court filings from multiple RICO cases, gang leaders often negotiate truces the same way governments handle diplomacy, through intermediaries. Messages travel from solitary confinement cells to prison yards hundreds of miles away. A single phrase written on a kite, a small, folded note, can end weeks of bloodshed. Peace is called, one note reportedly read after the 2013 Pelican Bay hunger strike, signaling an end to an internal conflict. But peace in prison is temporary. It lasts only until the next betrayal. Betrayal, in the world of prison gangs, is inevitable. Informants, known as snitches or rats, live under the constant threat of discovery. One wrong word to investigators can mean a death sentence. According to the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force, dozens of inmates have been murdered over the years after being suspected of cooperating with authorities. Some were innocent of it, suspicion alone was enough. In one chilling case documented in court filings, a federal inmate was stabbed over 30 times after rumors spread that he had testified against the Mexican Mafia. Surveillance footage showed the attack lasted less than a minute. The weapon. A sharpened piece of metal hidden inside a shoe sole. The killers didn't run or hide. They stood calmly until guards arrived. For them, it wasn't murder, it was duty. The toll extends beyond inmates. Correctional officers face the same dangers. Some live under constant threat of retaliation. Others, lured by promises of protection or money, are pulled into corruption. In 2014, according to a U.S. Department of Justice investigation, 27 correctional officers in Baltimore's city jails were charged for smuggling drugs, weapons, and contraband for the Black Guerrilla Family. The gang's leader, Tavon White, reportedly declared himself the boss of the jail during a recorded call. He controlled who ate, who fought, and who lived. That case exposed a harsh reality: the line between guard and gangster can blur when the system itself is broken. But amid the chaos, reform has never stopped trying to catch up. The Federal Bureau of Prisons and state systems have poured millions into counter-gang strategies, specialized intelligence units, gang validation systems, and step-down programs meant to break the cycle of violence. Facilities like ADX Florence were built on a single philosophy: total isolation. No gang meetings, no yard time with others, no contact. The inmates housed there, from Aryan Brotherhood generals to leaders of the Mexican Mafia, live in near silence. According to official BOP statements, communication restriction management units have cut off hundreds of gang messages before they reach the outside world. But isolation breeds its own danger. Experts say it doesn't always stop violence, it just moves it deeper underground. One retired FBI agent who spent 25 years investigating prison gangs described it best. You can bury a man in concrete, but if he has a message, it'll find its way out. The system was never designed to contain loyalty. Outside the walls, the effects ripple through communities. Many gang leaders recruit through family ties. Nephews, sons, or friends of incarcerated members often take up their mantle on the streets. These soldiers continue operations while their leaders direct from behind bars. A 2022 report by the National Gang Intelligence Center confirmed that prison gangs now have networks across multiple states, using encrypted messaging apps and social media to move money and coordinate activities. It's a digital version of the same empire that began decades ago with hand signals and whispered orders. For prison administrators, every day becomes a chess match. Lockdowns, transfers, and cell rotations are designed to break patterns. Yet each move carries risk. One wrong transfer can unite rival factions or ignite hidden tensions. According to the California Inspector General's 2020 report, mismanaged transfers have triggered deadly outbreaks of violence, leading to multiple inmate and staff deaths. Still, there are stories of defiance, of men who walk away from the gangs and try to rebuild their lives. Former members often describe the process as a kind of rebirth. One ex-Aryan Brotherhood member, in a 2018 interview, said, "I had to unlearn survival. Every day I woke up waiting to die. Now I wake up waiting to live." Many enter deprogramming or renunciation programs run by correctional departments or faith-based organizations. Success rates vary, but for some, it's the only path to freedom that doesn't involve a coffin. For society, the question remains, can the cycle ever end? Can a system built on punishment also deliver redemption? Some experts believe reform lies not in isolation but in connection, education, therapy, and meaningful rehabilitation. Programs like Norway's Halden prison model, which emphasizes dignity and reformation over punishment, have influenced small pilot programs in U.S. prisons. Early data suggests that when inmates are treated as humans rather than hostiles, violence drops dramatically. But critics argue America's prison crisis is too large, too deep, too rooted in inequality and over-incarceration to be fixed by goodwill alone. And so, the cycle continues: power built on fear, fear sustained by loyalty, and loyalty enforced through death. Behind the walls, the gangs still write their laws. Every riot, every deal, every silent nod keeps the empire alive. To the public, the prisons are fortresses of justice. To those inside, they're kingdoms of survival, where the only true law is control. Warning disclaimer. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. All information is based on verified public records, court filings, official investigations, and credible media reporting.